Have you ever just stopped and wondered about that you inside your head? You know, that constant voice, that feeling that seems like the absolute core of who you are? Well, in this explainer, we're going to poke at that very idea. We're going to explore the self not as some fixed, permanent soul, but as something way more like a dynamic user interface, an operating system that your brain builds to help you navigate the world.
This quote from author David Lodge just cuts right to the heart of it all. The idea here is that the self isn't something we are, but something we're constantly making. It's a pretty wild thought, and it really sets the stage for everything we're about to dive into.
So, let's just start with the biggest question there is. Who are you? I mean, really, if you strip away the job title, the family roles, all your hobbies, what's the essential, unchanging thing that makes you, you? It feels like it should be a simple question, but, well, the answer is anything but.
You know, that feeling that you're one single consistent person? It's a really powerful feeling, right? It's the story our brain tells us every single morning when we wake up. But what if it's just that, a story? A really, really useful fiction? We're going to look at the evidence that suggests this feeling of a permanent self might just be one of the most elegant illusions our brain has ever pulled off.
All right, so to start kind of chipping away at this idea of a permanent self, let's look at something we all experience every single day. Let's talk about our mini social selves and how we instinctively change and adapt depending on who we're with.
Seriously, think about it. The way you talk and act with your boss is probably pretty different from how you are with your best friend, right? The you at a big professional conference isn't the same you that shows up to a family dinner. We're all intuitively performing these different versions of ourselves, deploying multiple social identities without even thinking about it.
And this isn't just some casual observation. It's a whole field of study in psychology. Researchers Sonia Rackus and Marilyn Brewer actually gave it a name, social identity complexity. It's all about how we mentally organize all these different groups we belong to, like being a parent, a fan of a sports team, an employee, and a citizen, all at the same time.
So how does the brain even manage all these different identities without them all crashing into each other? Well, it turns out we use a few different mental strategies. Rackus and Brewer pointed to 4 main models for how we structure these different selves. Let's see how they work.
Okay, first up, we have what's called intersection. This is when your identity is defined only by where your groups overlap. So for example, your in-group isn't just women or lawyers, but that very specific combination of female lawyers. In that context, anyone outside that really narrow overlap is part of the outgroup.
And this really paints a picture of the idea, doesn't it? Your primary group, your us, is just that small shaded area where circle A and circle B cross over. It's a very, very tight and specific definition of who you are in that moment.
All right, the second model is dominance, and this one's all about creating a hierarchy. One identity becomes the main one, and all the others are kind of secondary to it. So someone might see lawyer as their primary identity, and their gender as just a secondary characteristic within that main group.
You can see it so clearly with this visual. Identity A, the dominant one, just completely contains the other one, B. The main dividing line for us versus them is based entirely on that primary group, A.
Third, we've got compartmentalization, and this one might feel the most familiar to a lot of us. This is basically where you switch hats depending on the situation. You just activate different identities in different contexts. At the office, you're the professional, but the moment you walk through the door at home, boom, you're the parent.
And this diagram shows it perfectly. See how identities A and B are totally separate? They exist side by side, and you just call on whichever one the situation needs. They don't really overlap or influence each other. And finally, there's the merger model. Now, this is the most inclusive and, honestly, the most complex approach. Instead of keeping your identities separate, you combine them. Your in-group includes everyone from all of your groups. So your we would include all lawyers and all women.
And as you can see here, this is basically the exact opposite of that first intersection model. Here, the in-group isn't that tiny sliver of overlap. It's the whole shebang, the entire area of both circles combined. This represents a really complex and inclusive sense of self that goes way beyond simple categories.
So, we've seen the psychological evidence that we all operate with these multiple fluid selves, but how is that even possible? How does that work? Let's shift gears from psychology to neurology and look at the physical wiring in our brain that allows all of this to happen.
The big, key concept here is neuroplasticity. This is the absolutely incredible discovery that our brains aren't fixed hardware. They are constantly changing, literally rewiring themselves based on our experiences. The classic saying is, neurons that fire together, wire together.
The brain you have today is physically different from the brain you had a year ago.
Building on that amazing idea, neuroscientist Sebastian Sung introduced the concept of the connectome. Just think of it like a complete, mind-bogglingly complex wiring diagram of your brain. And Sung's argument is profound. You are your connectome, and because of neuroplasticity, that connectome is always changing. Your identity, therefore, has a physical home, and it's constantly in flux.
And hey, this is not just some abstract theory. We can actually see this happening. I mean, look at these incredible studies. Scientists watched people's brains physically change after they learned how to juggle, and then they changed back when they stopped. They saw the hippocampus, the brain's navigation center, physically grow larger in London taxi drivers who had to memorize thousands of streets. This is concrete proof that our experiences physically sculpt the very organ that generates our sense of self.
Okay, so we've got the psychology of multiple selves, and we've got the neuroscience of a brain that's always changing. How in the world do we put it all together? Let's bring in that core metaphor for this whole idea, thinking of the self as a user interface.
This slide just sums up the entire shift in thinking perfectly. The old view saw the self as this fixed, singular thing, an essence, kind of like a diamond. The new view, which is backed up by all this evidence, sees the self as a fluid, multiple process. It's something that is actively constructed, more like a river than a rock. It's not an object you have, it's an activity you're doing.
So why does any of this matter? Because this new way of understanding the self isn't just some fascinating scientific concept. It has massive implications for how we live our lives. It's all about agency. It's about rewriting your own code. So here's the absolute bottom line. If your self is a process and not a fixed thing, then you are a participant in that process. Every new skill you learn, every habit you build, every different perspective you adopt is actively, physically shaping your connectome. It means your identity isn't some destiny that was written in stone. It's a living script that you have a hand in writing. You have agency.
And that leaves us with one last, really powerful question to think about. If your self is a flexible, programmable user interface for interacting with reality, what will you choose to create with it next?